Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on how to ace the interview to land any job. So what I'd like to do is introduce myself. My name is Ethan Chazin. I am a New York-based executive coach and organizational development trainer. Let's dive right into today's webinar. I've got a whole bunch of stuff to share with you. So first and foremost, I'd like you to think of the interview in terms of a process as a play. And the play that you perform is conducted in 3 acts. And those 3 acts are the pre-interview, the interview, and the post-interview. We're going to walk through each to ensure that you maximize your potential to convert this performance into either a comedy or a smashing success as opposed to a tragedy. So having said that, let's talk about the first act. The first act is the pre-interview, and this is all the requisite things you can and will do in advance of the actual interview that will set yourself down the road of success. So what are the things that you do? Well, in my coaching practice, I work my clients through how do you do effective research. The research will set you up for success, but what are you researching? So first of all, within that organization, the individual or individuals that you will be meeting with, whether in person or virtual, the senior leadership team, their background, experience, qualifications. Also, this organization's key competitors, their products and services, the communities or groups of individuals called stakeholders that they serve. All of that research is critically important so that you can prepare for success during the interview. Next up, practice, 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 practice. How do you do that? Conducting mock interviews. Find 3 or 4 individuals who you trust implicitly, either close friends and or family, peers, old mentors, coaches, bosses. Find a few select few individuals that you conduct either an in-person or virtual interview role play with in preparation for exactly how the actual interview is going to end up, again, in person or virtual. You're going to give that individual or individuals you're preparing to do the mock interview with questions you anticipate being asked and questions you are going to ask. You're going to ask that individual or individuals that you do the practice, the role play with on the mock interviews, if it's virtual. 2, you're going to schedule a virtual video conference so that you can check your camera, your microphone, your lighting, your background, your voice, your eye contact, all the requisite things that either lead to success or failure during an actual interview you're going to practice. You're going to have all your necessary documentation, your resume, your salesmanship in print, examples of your work, research, design, graphic designs, not just the papers, the hard copy, but soft copy, electronic versions available as well before you go online to do the interview. You're going to make that available during the mock interview so you can practice using print copies as well as digital electronic copies. You're going to incorporate anything that's part of your performance during the interview process on the pre-interview. Know who you're going to be speaking with, their background, experience, job title, roles, responsibilities, and the level of interaction or working relationship they will have with you as the ideal candidate who's interviewing for this specific role. Again, the pre-interview is your opportunity to conduct performance practice. It's making sure you have everything reconciled, all issues well at hand before the interview actually rolls around. So this is Act 1, the pre-interview. Also, I want you to go back and I want you to look at your LinkedIn profile and any other online bios, profiles you have to make sure that is identical to the actual copy of your resume that that individual or individuals you'll be speaking with is in possession of, that you submitted for consideration for the position you're interviewing for. So if you're going in person, life after COVID, if you're going back to meeting people face to face, know the office location, understand how to get there, how long it takes there. If this interview is important enough, go and make a mock trip to try out the logistics in advance. Also, if it's virtual, what documents do you need to prepare and have at arm's length for the actual interview? Why not also, since you know who you'll be meeting with, send customized invitations to that person or people to connect with you on LinkedIn in advance. This is all about setting yourself apart. One way to do that is a customized invitation. So you can see I've crafted the messaging that fits into the LinkedIn number of text items, characters, but it also formally introduces yourself on a more intimate basis than sending a randomly sent generic invite to connect through LinkedIn. So you want to customize the note. I've told you before about the research. There's another aspect that's at play here, and it's just as powerful, probably the most powerful consideration you prepare for, and that is the actual culture of the organization. What does it feel like to work there? There are two kinds of organizational culture. There's the formal or aspirational. It's what the organization says about itself in its marketing materials, on its website, its HR department, the things they talk about that they want to believe it's like to work there. That may or may not be close to the practical reality of the experience employees who work there have, but an even more accurate gauge of what it feels like to work there is the informal culture. That's what employees say it's like. And how do you find that? Go talk to employees. You should have the opportunity through research in the pre-interview. You have the opportunity to identify 3 or 4 individuals who work or worked in that organization previously. Find the person who may have had the position you're applying for. Go to Glassdoor, Indeed, look at employee reviews. So understand, first of all, that that's going to be a skewed perspective, but it'll give you some background. What I mean by skewed perspective is somebody who's predisposed to go to a Glassdoor or Indeed and take the time to write an evaluation or a review of their current or past employer. It's going to be on one end of a spectrum. Either they're going to be incredibly happy about their experience there, I give it a 5, or they're going to be incredibly negative, which is what drove them to go online and take the time and effort to write a review. But it doesn't matter. All of that is fair play and invaluable insight into the informal culture. What does it actually feel like from the perspective of employees to work in that organization? So, what are the questions you are going to prepare for in advance? There's no universal set of questions you can anticipate, but there are some standard questions that seem to come up time and time again. So tell me about yourself, which, by the way, doesn't mean your hobbies, interests, background, family considerations, religious immersion. What tell me or us about yourself means, as you prepare the interview, in the pre-interview phase, tell us about yourself as you can almost answer it as it applies to my ability to achieve significant success in this role. Another permutation of that question is, what have you done or accomplished in the past that's directly related to this internship or this full-time or contract position? But it's, tell us about your successes achieved in the past that from a work perspective are directly related to what we're going to require you to do, the roles and responsibilities on the job description for this position that you applied to. So here's a general guideline, and I mentioned it previously. For any question you can and do prepare to answer, you ask yourself, you put an add-on at the end of every question that says, as it applies to my ability to excel in this role. That'll get you into the right frame of mind to answer questions focused on me as a set of solutions to the problems that keep you and your organization up at night, and I'll solve if you bring me in as the ideal candidate in this role. So there's another piece of your preparation that you can and should be doing if you haven't already done it. So here's a hat tip or a cheat sheet for you. If you land an interview, that tells you that on paper, the documents you submitted, most likely a resume or a CV, the documentation you submitted means on paper you have the requisite background that they are looking for, or they wouldn't have invested their time to schedule the interview. So you already have an inside track. How do you maximize that? Go back and look at your experience section of your resume. Every position you've ever had, those bullet points of the work that you did, those tasks, I want you to, for preparation of the interview, go back and look at those bullet points and ask yourself, what was the challenge or the problem or the situation that needed to be addressed? And as a result, what action or actions did I take? And what result did I achieve? So every bullet point, as you re-architect or re-engineer the wordsmithing of it, is addressed from the perspective of CAR, challenge faced, action taken, result achieved. You're not going to be able to do this for every bullet point, but for a majority of them, you want to refine or reword the phrasing so that it's challenge, action, result. And when you do that, you can delete the challenge. And then think about what that does. Your professional experience section, if it wasn't before, is now going to be redesigned by you as a laundry list of actions achieved, actions taken, results achieved. So that will sing the power of the set of solutions that you bring to bear during the interview as the ideal candidate that they are looking for. Action, result. So again, what was the challenge that I faced that led me to this bullet point or underpinning this bullet point? What actions did I take? What results did I achieve? When you go through that, you delete the challenge and you're left with action, result, etc. for every position held. So now, having said that, you're going to use that card, challenge, action, result, for every bullet point. So you've done that research in the pre-interview stage for a very specific reason. You're going to craft 3 or 4 at most questions that are based off that research that you conducted when they ask you in the interview if you have any questions for them, which you will. So those are specific research driven, but you can ask other questions that are more general in nature, less position specific, but also indicate a strong preponderance of professionalism, or it indicates your professional measure. And those questions that indicate your professionalism sound like this. I've researched and prepared for our time together by looking at the responsibilities needed for success in this role. Can you tell me a little bit about, if you had a short list, 2 or 3 things that you felt were most critical for success in this role? When we sit down and we do my 30, 60, 90-day review to gauge my performance in this role, how will you determine success? Can you tell me about the ideal qualities, characteristics that fill in the blank name of organization typically looks for their most successful candidates or employees? Those are questions that you can sense are not specific to the responsibilities of the job you're interviewing for, but are a more high-level perspective of you as a professional to join their team and achieve success in this role. You can ask them, how often will we meet to discuss my performance? And we've talked about already what are the 2 or 3 most critical requirements that you determine are needed for success in this role. Here's what you want to do. You want to understand that regardless of the individual or individuals you're speaking with, the experience level they have interviewing, whether they have complete mastery or they're relatively new to interviewing as a discipline, you're going to be doing a relatively small percent of the talking during this typical 1-hour interview. So you want to limit your questions to no more than 4 or 5, which is why each question matters. And that's where the research and preparation come in. So first of all, who are you? Who will you be meeting? That's critically important. You should know her, his, their background, experience, qualifications. Are they going to be somebody who you report to, or are they what's referred to as the gatekeeper, the initial candidate review team, whether HR, outside recruiter, staffing agency? What's their role? And is it one person, several people? You want to nail that. All the information you can on the potential 1 or multiple interviewers who are going to be meeting with you. You can see this is a laundry list of research preparation that you'll be doing. That's it. Curtain closes. Done. Act 1, the pre-interview. Now get ready for intermission. You're preparing for the second act, the actual interview itself. So what happens during this second act? This interview is you arrive early. So if it's a physical location that you're going to, you've already researched and prepared. You did a test run, a trial run. You know how to get there, even if it's via public transportation. You know When you get into the physical location, the front lobby, the minute you walk through those front doors and you approach the reception desk, you are effectively in interview mode. Now, what happens if this is still in COVID world, a virtual interview? You arrive 1 or 2 minutes early. You make sure you have the start time, and you make sure you know the um, what region or time zone you're in, because that'll affect obviously when you join. So the minute you join this virtual interview and or you arrive at the front desk, you are effectively on. You're ready, you're prepared. You've done in your trial run a role play, a mock interview, so you have your resume electronically and physically. You've researched and prepared the questions you anticipate being asked and the questions you're going to ask. In fact, they are right in front of you at the monitor where you're going to be having the interview. You've already done a trial run. You have your camera, you know your voice intonation, you've rehearsed, you're ready to go. You're sitting in an incredibly professional upright posture, somewhat leaning in, a little bit forward, straight up. You're making eye contact, whether you have an external Logitech or you have an internal camera. You're making eye contact. You've rehearsed so that your voice is a natural flow. And you've also prepared so that there's very few what we call pregnant pauses. So that's going to be something you're going to avoid. And so what you want to do is understand, if you're meeting in person, there's the handshake, which you want to put your hand as far in as you can and put forth squeeze pressure to match what the individual's doing. But if you don't have that, you've got your eyes. As Tyra Banks says in Project Runway, smize. Your eyes are the window to your soul. So whether you're introverted, extroverted, and if you're introverted, which 30 to 40% of the population is, this is going to take more effort. You need to engage. You have very little opportunity, especially if you lose the in-person dynamic and you're relegated to a virtual interview. What do we know about the interview? Regardless of whether it's a Shakespearean performance or it's the Blue Man Group, it does not matter. Or Book of Mormon, it doesn't matter what the act is. All interviews follow a certain flow or process. The interview will explain the organization, give you some insight into the culture. Remember, it's formal, it's aspirational. They're going to tell you about the position, maybe a little bit about the team, and then they move on to ask you questions. And so that's going to be the next phase of it. After that, what you're going to do is be asked, do you have any questions for us? And you will. You will. But there's, and we'll talk about the rationale for that in a moment. But understand that at the heart of the interview, most of my clients really struggle with this. They perceive, especially in the middle of a global pandemic and a depression era economy where jobs are scarce, they perceive and feel and viscerally exhibit the pressure that they're feeling. It comes out. It comes out. And so what I want you to do as you're in the pre-interview phase, preparing for the interview, is to understand that even if you're feeling incredible pressure, what you want to do is you want to make sure it is a two-way conversation. It's a dialogue. And that will, even if you have to fake it, that will enable you to have a little bit less pressure that you're feeling. Because understand that as a two-way conversation, you're not just giving information, you're also obtaining information. There's a very real consideration going on that you need to reconcile. Could I work there? Would I want to work there? So that's something you want to think about. Having a two-way conversation is not only you giving information, but soliciting information. And that's predicated, how you orchestrate that or choreograph it is in the questions that you've prepared. And you really want to also ask questions that are germane to the requirements of the position, the reporting structure, who you report directly to, who you might have an ancillary or dotted line reporting, the composition of the team you'll be working with, the extent of it being virtual versus in person. All those questions are fair game for you to solicit information to make a more enlightened decision. Could I work there? So I mentioned it before, but I want to go a little bit deeper. What are some of the questions that you can anticipate? Tell us about yourself. Talk about experiences, things you've accomplished, succeeded at, that are directly relevant prior work to the requirements that are needed for success in this role. And that's a behavioral interview. We'll talk a little bit, I'll mention that a little bit more. But you should have in your pre-interview, your research and preparation and your rehearsing of this Shakespearean performance, you should have 3 or 4 success stories, things that you are most proud of, that you've accomplished in your career. They can be work related. They can be community engagement, volunteer work. They can be group-based projects or research that you did in academic institutions that you matriculated from. So those are success stories. And there's another aspect of preparing to answer questions they may ask. They're going to ask you most likely about a time where you struggled with either a situation, either it's conflict, interpersonal, you struggled with a difficult person, coworker, manager, how you resolve that. Can you tell us about a time where you achieved success working collaboratively in a team construct, maybe virtually? So can you tell me a time that you failed at something and what you learned about that? Here's a general way to prepare and answer these questions. It's not that they're asking you to divulge a weakness to the point that you're telling them why you should not be in consideration. What they're asking you to do is probe and think about your past experiences, times where you faced challenges, and how you address those challenges, or maybe you failed at something, the lessons learned. How do you exhibit your grittiness, your stick-to-itiveness, a time where you hit a wall, a barrier, and you overcame? Because more than likely, in the role you're interviewing for, you are by nature, because it's work, you're going to face challenges. What they want to understand is not that you didn't achieve all your goals you ever strive for throughout your life and your career. They want to know, most telling about a person's construct is the times you faced a challenge and failed, and you carried through, marched on, learned from, adapted, adjusted. That's what they want to look at, because those are skills that are needed for success in the 21st century workplace. So having said that, you, as a set of solutions to the problems this organization faces in interviewing you for this role, you're a set of solutions. And so therefore you want to prove or demonstrate times you worked in positions in the past that were comparable in the work you did to this position you're interviewing for. Tell us about times you did work in the past that are directly relevant to this position. That is what's referred to as behavioral interviewing. It's you as a set of solutions based on what you've done before that you'll be required to do in this specific position. That's behavioral interviewing. And it is, for interviewers, the most insightful way to glean from a potential candidate your ability to achieve success in this role we're looking for, because it requires you to do these 5, 6, 7 key tasks that you have experience having done that before. And we want to see you demonstrate that. We want to see your successes. We want to see challenges you've overcome, difficult people you've worked with to achieve success collaboratively. How did you solve problems that we think you'll likely face in this role? Now, we get to, during the interview, inevitably, you will be asked at some point, do you have any questions for us? Now, candidates that I've worked with, whether senior level executives to people who are relatively new in their careers, they can struggle in this question. And when you're asked, do you have any questions? Those who struggle do so because they've not prepared adequately in the pre-interview process phase, where you've done the necessary research to reveal things that lend themselves to you asking very specific questions. So why is it that you're going to ask questions? You want to, need to, have to set yourself apart from competitors, the other candidates. If there are maybe 100 candidates, do you want to be one of the 100? Or do you want to be one of the top 2 or 3? Well, how you differentiate yourself, how you promote yourself as a professional is predicated not only in the work you've done and the examples you can give of a behavioral interview, how you'll achieve success doing the work. You want to promote yourself as a professional, and nothing enables you to do so more than asking very insightful, results-driven professional questions. So, do you have any questions for us? No. No means this is what it means. This is what the implicit underpinning connotation is of a no. I don't take myself seriously. I don't consider you a professional. I haven't invested the requisite research time and effort to really think through the appropriateness of fit between what I bring to the table and what your organization is looking for in the ideal candidate in this role. So that's why you do the research and preparation. So you can see here are a few generic questions. So these are 2 of the 4 or 5 you can ask. And you can see that the goal is not to ask too many questions. That, by the way, you want to be careful of the questions you ask, because asking a fairly standard or basic rudimentary question kind of reveals also that you haven't done your research and preparation. So some that are indicative of an individual who's oriented to professionalism sound a little bit like this. Can you tell me about the kinds of individuals, their characteristics that you've had the most success working with? That's great if you're being interviewed by a potential peer or manager. Can you tell me a little bit about when we sit down and conduct my performance review or the end of my probationary period, how you're going to define or determine success in this role? Those are questions that, although basic in general, are indicators of somebody's background in terms of their moral fiber, character, professionalism. I said earlier that the interview is a two-way conversation. But I want you to think about you as an ideal candidate joining this organization as a member of their team. You are a set of solutions to the problems that keep them up at night, their needs, wants, desires for the ideal candidate in this role. And what you're doing, to the extent possible, is creating a bridge for them. You're making it crystal clear in the information you give and the information you solicit that your strengths, background, experience, which, by the way, make you fundamentally unique and invaluable and memorable, because nobody has the same background as you. Your strengths are a match with their needs. That's a relationship. And that's what you want to cultivate during the interview process. So understand that at its heart, an interview, although a two-way conversation, is in effect a sales meeting. And you're selling yourself as the ideal candidate to achieve success in this exciting role. As such, the organization is also selling themselves on how attractive they are to you as the ideal organization for you to join based on their culture and their set of values, their vision, their mission, all the things that make them, let's say, Patagonia versus HSBC. So you want to make sure that it's an effective two-way conversation, because your responsibility is to close the deal. And what does that look like from you, the candidate's perspective? At the very end is the opportunity to seal the deal, whether it's virtual, face to screen, or whether it's face to face in person. Regardless, there's a standard, consistent close to the sales call. So whether or not you feel like this is an opportunity for you, you want to do what's necessary to seal the deal, and then you can afterwards go back and think about this as an appropriate fit. But what you do to seal the deal is you reiterate your strong interest. And so what that sounds like is, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for giving me the time to speak with you about this opportunity. You know, when I researched the role and conducted some background, I was excited at the prospect of speaking with you, and now having the chance to learn from you, the ideal people you hire, the role in more detail, share my background. I'm even more excited that I'm the ideal candidate to help you immediately in this exciting role. Next up, you should not end this virtual interview or this face-to-face without knowing who makes the next step. There's nothing worse than ending an interview, and then, you know, when I do coaching with my clients, I say, so what happens next? I don't know. Are you expected to reach out to them? If so, what time frame? Are they going to get back to you? If so, when? Because that'll facilitate you having post-interview correspondence follow-up with them. So understand who makes the next steps and understand where you are in the hiring process. So you may be a phenomenal candidate, but you may be at the start of their process. It may take them 2 weeks. They need to backfill a current vacant position, or they may just be exploring whether they want to hire somebody and they're just kicking the tires, so to speak, and you're the first of people that they plan on meeting over the next 3, 4, 6 months. And you really want to know where they are in the process, as well as who makes the next step. Congratulations. You've come so far through this performance. You've done the pre-interview, which is the research and preparation. You've done the interview itself, but I said it was a 3-act play. So if there's the before and the during, the next and final act is the after, and that's the post-interview. And so what happens? I'm constantly amazed, regardless of where the individual is at that point in their career. They always rush through immediately after they get off of the interview. They send the obligatory thank you immediately. I don't want you to do that. I want you to take some time and do like wise Rafiki. Go to a quiet place and think about the following. What did you hear that you really liked? What did you hear that made you say, I could work there? Conversely, what did you hear that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up or gave you pause, generated some concern? Trust your initial instinct, the fight or flight syndrome, because that's typically your first reaction is the most spot on. What did you think about the person or people who spoke with you? What was your knee-jerk reaction? What did you think about the workplace? Now, that's fine if you physically go and you get to see the stage, the setting, all those theatrical aspects of people working in their environment. But what if it's virtual? You don't have that opportunity. But what did you observe of the individuals? I suggest, if you really care to do this well, this thing called interviewing, go on YouTube, watch a few, go on LinkedIn, watch a few professional development videos on how to pick up people's nonverbal cues. There are things, for example, called micro expressions. Micro expressions are in the minute of a conversation. Somebody may either asking you a question or answering you a question before they speak and put on a poker face, or they do surface acting where they put on a emotionally blank construct. They make a facial expression for almost an instantaneous second. That's called the micro expression. Did you pick up on any of those during the interview? Jot it down. You want to go to a quiet place and you want to jot down your notes, impressions, thoughts. Congratulations. You've now, after the interview, scoped out your initial thoughts based on the experience you just went through. Or maybe you've had a number of rounds of interviewing, but at every stage you want to capture your thoughts about what your impressions were. Now you're ready to send the post-interview thank you email. Thank you, Jane, John, or other gendered first name. Thank you for meeting with me. Reiterate your strong interest in the position. If there were 1 or 2 things they asked for in detail, as far as examples of your success stories or your behavioral interviewing, reinforce that. As we discussed in the interview, maybe they asked you a question. And during the interview, you were not prepared to answer it. You said, you know what, that's a critically important question. What I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time and effort researching it and give you due respect and consideration of then sending that to you afterwards, if you're fine with that. So maybe they requested information that you're going to provide doing a bit of research after the interview. So that's that. You send the thank you, and then the last aspect of the thank you email is, as we discussed, I understand that a decision will be rendered in the next 2-week time frame. I look forward to hearing from you. Please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions or need additional information. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. That's the close. And also, you can send them a thank you card. You go to Duane Reade, CVS, Vistaprint. You get a whole box of them, relatively inexpensive. If you're like me, you have chicken scratch handwriting. If somebody with more neat cursive writing, send them a thank you. Maybe you have business cards that are printed up, 2-sided, your contact details front, core competencies, your personal value statement on the back side. You include that in the thank you card. You send it out. You're done. If you haven't already done so, you send them an invitation, which you can customize to connect with you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time, Jane John Doe, for meeting with me to discuss the analyst role with ABC Company. I'd like to invite you to connect and look forward to the next steps in the process. Your first name, last name, your email address, cell phone number. Now, you're tracking everybody you speak with, meet with, have informational interviews, real interviews. You're tracking on a spreadsheet the person you met with, their job title, name of organization, date that you interviewed with them, outcomes, impressions, follow-up required, status, next steps. So if you've been tasked with any type of post-interview follow-up that you committed to, you do so. And that's the journey. Congratulations. You've conducted this theatrical performance in 3 acts called The Interview. I want to leave you with a few thoughts, primarily this. The interview is a golden opportunity to forge a stronger relationship. It's a two-way conversation. Practice does often make close to perfect. So thank you so much for your time to listen to this webinar. And I'd like to share my contact details. Let me know if you'd like to have a one-on-one coaching consultation to talk through some of these details on interviewing effectiveness or any other aspect of a job search or career transition. You can get more videos of me on my YouTube channel or find out more about me on my website, thechazingroup.com. Thank you so much, and here's to your career and professional success. Take care.